one rarely hears a voice that is so specific to one person. Almost a kind of a baritonal, a guttural kind of something or other, something Greek.
The mouth, the eyes, the nose, the teeth. I mean, she was a strong animal.
Listen to that, the character in the sound, and listen to the way she convinces you.
She was the total performer.
She was such a wonderful actress.
Her fire on the stage, her scorn, her love-making. This woman on the stage was sexy.
She brought the drama to us as well as this unbelievable technique.
But if I had to pick just one thing, it would have to be, I think, pathos. She could bring to the turmoil of Tosca, who seems to be strong, she could bring a pathos to this role. Along with Norma, she made the role her own. There's no disputing that she was one of the greatest opera divas of all time. She died alone in her Paris apartment in 1977 at the age of 53. Her career was cut short and the love of her life had gone. Sadly, her wonderful performances were rarely captured on film. But Act 2 of Franco Zeffirelli's definitive production of Tosca does exist, recorded when Maria was 14 in 1964. In many ways, the themes in Tosca of a diva living and dying for love and her art mirror the life of Maria Callas. So in examining the role of Tosca, we get a new insight into Callas, the performer, Maria, the woman, and into one of opera's most successful melodramas.
Bam, 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 bam. Roma. Tosca is grand for a story which is very intimate. It's a story of three characters. And those three characters who at the beginning of the opera are there with their passions, their jealousy, their love, their intrigues, and so on. At the end of the opera, they're all dead. The play, the tragedy, drama, whatever it is, was written by French, Sardou, who was looking at certain models in his memory of the French history. But it matched perfectly well. If you change scenery, instead of being Paris, it's that kind of Rome.
He wrote it for the greatest actress, or certainly the greatest star in the world of that time, and that was the legendary Sarah Bernhardt. Of course, Puccini saw Bernhardt on the stage, and the ritual with the candles at the end of Act 2 after the murder of Scarpia was invented by Bernhardt herself.
Sarah Bernhardt's performances on stage affected many people, Puccini among them. And I think that the grandness of the performance, the timing of the performance, just the candle scene at the end of Act 2, and the musical timing that it requires, and how Puccini composed it, so that perhaps it was an imitation of Sarah Bernhardt's performance that he saw.
The characters have been fictionalized, but to a certain extent, they did actually exist. There was a Flora Tosca. There was indeed Baron Vitellius Scarpia.
Baron Scarpia was the chief of the police for the Vatican regime at the time, and one of the most ruthless men in Rome, at the same time very attractive to ladies and attracted by ladies, and there hadn't been one woman in Rome that resisted his determination to make her fall. And Tosca was the last target for him, but he knew that she was faithful to this painter, Mario Cavaradossi.
Cavaradossi, it is, it is a noble, is so involved in politics, he is an artist, and he has a great experience of life. And Tosca, it is a very young prima donna. It's a very genuine person, but young in spirit, a jealous woman, a tremendous beautiful one. There were many sopranos, then they portray Tosca as a big matrona, and Cavaradossi will be the puppet. And in reality, the history is totally the opposite.
I remember the first day of rehearsal in Covent Garden, the rehearsal room, and Maria, she cleared the table of all music and papers and everything. She said, now, it's clean. I want to start from scratch. Tell me how you see Tosca.
She came down on stage for the dress rehearsal in this chiffon, sort of apricot pinky, with this marvellous mantilla. And I just thought it was genius. I thought that is exactly how she should look, because she looked beautiful, she looked fresh, and she looked, of course, exactly like somebody in the middle of June coming from the street.
She's disheveled. She's come out of her apartment or whatever, her house, gone through the market, not made up like a diva, and bringing the flowers for the Virgin. So she would grab the flowers, the various flower stalls in Campo de Fiori, and chatting in Romanesque with the various sellers, and taste something, taste another, take the flowers, but the flowers are not nicely arranged. Put some roses and some other daisies, and the flower bouquet with which I made her arrive was very telling.
Fragile, feminine, young. This girl has the strength to kill Scarpia. If you see a Tosca, then he's so jealous, screaming, so overpowering and so bossy, it doesn't impress you so much when she kills Scarpia.
So that's the kind of woman that I brought to life, and Maria adored it.
It's a relaxed day for Cavaradossi. Very little he knows that it's the last day of his life.
We first see a political prisoner, indeed. Angelotti, who rushes into the church, finds a key left by his aristocratic sister and hides.
So he has to help him, he has to hide him, he has admired him so much. But what happened? Tosca arrives. Cavaradossi has to, his fights are tremendous. His mind goes in between trying to show to Tosca that he's working, that he has to paint, and Tosca then is in the mood to love.
I don't think she was very sure of herself, as a matter of fact. And insecure, at least that's the justification I try to give. So that is why she comes in and out, and she's nervous and anxious and a nuisance also, rather.
They almost really had it there on the bench. So yes, wait, one moment she said, no, in fronte alla Madonna, let me alone. Tonight, come to the villa and then we'll do wonderful things together. They were about to do it there on the bench, which sometimes has happened, you know, only in confession box.
Cavaradossi, in painting his picture, had been trying, obviously, to find a woman that could indicate Mary Magdalene in the painting, because the painting is dominated, in fact, by the Madonna, who is dark. But down on the right-hand corner is a picture of the Marchesa Avanti in its sketched form, but with blue eyes and blonde hair. And it's that Tosca sees, and it's that she says, who's that woman? And when eventually, of course, she recognizes her, he says, that's nonsense. I've just seen this woman praying in the church.
She noticed that he is nervous from the very beginning, so he said, somebody's here, and so until he sees the painting of Latavanti. And then it is so much, Cavaradossi starts to show his anger, and she's not right to be jealous, you know.
She looked at every corner of the chapel and in the nave to see if there was a woman. Then she finds out that the chapel next door is the one of the Marchesa Attavanti, and he has portrayed her as Maddalena. Blonde? Why don't you have given her my eyes, gli occhi neri? You've given her blue eyes, the eyes of the Marchesa, not in mine.
Maria Callas was in her 20s, and she met Meneghini after a performance, and he realized that she was lonely and that it was a major talent, and he became fascinated by her.
And she met this man, this little businessman, who always flirted with singers and married him.
She wanted somebody who would take care of her, so she went into the relationship without really loving Meneghini.
And then she didn't get anything from that marriage. She confessed to me, I shouldn't repeat it, but that their private life, that intimate life, was absolutely below zero.
She went on this cruise in 1959 with Onassis and his wife and Winston Churchill and Meneghini. By the time she came back, both Onassis and Kallas left their spouses and went off together. These were two very tempestuous Greeks who had very hard lives, and they had a lot that brought them together, a lot to share and to talk about. And they had a passionate sex life, which Maria didn't have with her husband.
The husband, he must have had sex with her once a year, perhaps. He said that publicly. Onassis perhaps was the only one who offered her a big impact with the physical life that a woman like that needed and deserved. I mean, she spent the best young years of her life without having a sexual life. My God, an emotional sexual life.
She thought that she had found the love of her life and the man she would spend the rest of her life with. Onassis never responded with the same intensity, and he always kept a little bit aloof from the women he became involved with romantically. She tried to get pregnant with Meneghini, and she even took what was then passed for fertility pills, and she didn't get pregnant, so she thought she could not conceive. And so I think she was careless, and she became pregnant with Onassis. Onassis was still married, so he convinced her not to say anything until at least he got his divorce. And the baby was delivered on March 30th, 1960. It had trouble breathing, and the baby died. There is a birth certificate and a death certificate signed the same day, a picture of the baby, and this picture she always kept with her, and it was in her apartment when she died. Some people believe that Onassis hindered her career and kept her from performing. In fact, it was the opposite. Onassis kept urging her to perform, to train, because he wanted her to keep singing. He wanted to be with a famous woman.
He was there in the sun, in the Aegean Sea, on the boat. That she began to smoke, going to bed very late at night. She was not practicing.
But she was so involved in her relationship with him, she didn't want to sing anymore, and did it reluctantly.
The general administrator of Covent Garden was Sir David Webster, and he made Covent Garden into a world-class opera house. And he and Franco Zeffirelli ganged up on Maria Callas to persuade her to come to Covent Garden and have a new production of Tosca.
Webster called her. We called her together, actually. And finally she said, all right, I'll do it. You do it, really? Yes.
When the leading parts are taken by geniuses of the quality of the artists we have with us tonight, of Kallas on the one hand and Gobbi on the other, I'm absolutely certain that in years to come, those who have seen Tosca here at Covent Garden will probably bore your grandchildren by telling them stories of how remarkable the performance was that you saw in 1964.
David Webster wanted her here because I think he thought she was the best. And putting her together with Gobbi, who was quite clearly the best at that time, and with Franco, you couldn't have had a better team.
Angelotti had a beautiful sister who was blonde and blue-eyed. She's the woman who goes to the church, or has been going to the church, to the private chapel. She's the Marchesa d'Artavanti, and she accidentally leaves a fan behind which has her coronet on it. That will be used by Scarpia to inflame Tosca into a mad jealousy that will bring the whole thing crumbling down around her.
In her imagination, she really thinks there is something going on with her and Cavaradossi. And of course, you feel the expression. I mean, it is enough, you know, just to open the fan, la corona, lo stemma, e la Taranti. She starts already to think when she arrived to the church and Cavaradossi was nervous. So all that passed in her mind immediately, you know. And you see it, her reaction, which of course is the logical.
Only a mind so suspicious and so potentially insecure like Tosca could have accepted that bait, that little thing, little trick of the fan. And her jealousy kills him in the end.
The impact of Act Two was that you were made to really believe that Scarpia exists in this den. He's done all this before. There's a sort of a bed thing there and his big desk and a dining table on the stage. And it immediately hit me that what we were watching was film noir.
I saw everything lit by warm light and cast shadows, black shadows everywhere. And that was my approach, visual and emotional, to that act. It's warm, at the same time it's threatening, it's an inferno. You see shadows everywhere, lit from underneath. And it's very effective when they bring the body up. And the way she prays, she implores him with the lights, very Very good stroke.
Whenever she approached a role, even if she knew it well, it was as if she'd never done it before. Everything is swept away. Now let's deal with the show now. Let's get to the real meaning of why this music is written and what is the intention. What is the composer doing?
To be believable vocally as an actress and as a style and as a technique, and then to have the charisma for the public. I think that was what Maria did to the theater. She creates a new dimension.
Up to then, I suppose, I was only ever aware of opera singers singing to each other, as it were, but nevertheless looking at the conductor all the time. So it was a kind of triangular thing, not with Maria Callas. It is wonderful to have a proper actress or actor who then can sing, of course, like an angel.
She had great emotional experiences, and you could see she had great love in her. She was able to do love on the stage.
That power that she had of being able to act, of being able to look like that, of being able to sing like that, it's grossly unfair. But I also remember, fantastically, the relationship between her and Tito Gobbi. I was completely bewitched by him. I find him frightfully attractive. If you find the person attractive, which I did, then the playing, the intense playing of that scene in Act Two, I thought it was magnetic, completely magnetic between them.
What she and Gobbi do together is, it's brilliant. There isn't another word for it. It's truthful. It's coming from her toenails. And, how often do we get that?
Maria Callas and Tito Gobbi were the ideal pair from the point of view of drama. She played off him, he played off her. It was extraordinary. It was hair-raising. It was, your skin would sort of get little goose pimples.
One day, during a rehearsal, we were getting more and more involved in our interpretation, and I was acting really maybe a strong Scarpia, and she hated me on stage, and suddenly when she came, non è vero, she was running towards Scarpia. She arrived to my chest and she started beating my chest, non è vero. And so I catch her pulse, her hands, and I open her arm like this, like crucified.
She was helpless. And you would see all of a sudden that there was no longer this diva. This was this frightened person. And you saw it in her eyes, you saw it in her body.
It just simply happened, and once it happened, it was so exciting that it stayed. They did inspire each other, there's no question, and they both knew exactly how to, like actors, they played off each other, and that was what was so rare, of course, in opera.
He had two great actors and great singers, who you felt, that performance might well shift ever so slightly differently every night. So they had the freedom to really, really express themselves. No looking at the conductor. Really interacting with each other.
You'll find all the great directors. If you have good people, they do 90% of it. You present the environment that they're doing it in, but you hope that they are going to create it, which they did.
If you don't persuade the public that you believe in the role and whatever gesture you do is true, maybe you're not right. But so long as you persuade the public that it's so.
Oddio!
The difficult thing for me is to scale my voice down and my excitement from the altercation I've had with Scarpia, to sing that delicate vici d'arte. But Puccini has already written calming music in there. You have about 10 measures of D flat, D flat, D flat, D flat, D natural, I believe, and then she starts on an E flat with the vici d'arte.
When you want to find how to act on stage, all you have to do is listen to the music. The composer has already seen to that. If you take the trouble to really listen with your soul and with your ears, you will find every gesture there.
She bared her soul. She showed the world what she was. She was not afraid to portray this particular diva. She was not afraid to do that, and one did not think that about Maria Callas. I saw Tosca. I did not see Maria Callas.
She stops everything and sings this aria. So she tears herself off and shows you how much she suffers. And the audience is there. It's the most clever, dramatic stroke.
She was such a great musician, then she was singing really exactly with the dynamics, with what the composer really wrote. And that we see it in Maria constantly, in every one of her performances.
The main thing, I believe, is not the libretto, is mainly, though I give enormous attention to the words, I try to find truth in the music, or rather to try to feel what the composer wanted, because we are not creators, we are performers. We try to be faithful, and where we think that the composer may have failed, well, then we can give it a bit of fresh air, a bit of life.
To breathe life into those little black notes. if I followed the score, the musical score, as she was singing, I would see every tempo marking, every dynamic marking, everything being adhered to. And at the same time, it was not antiseptic. It was something that was very beautiful and moving.
Maria's ability to delve deeper and deeper into the musical phrasing and finding what she felt very strongly was the conviction of the composer was one of her great powers. And it's this that Zeffirelli knew. He got it in Golby as well. And it's this that he could call on, which would fire the imagination. He was determined that the characters would not be one-dimensional.
I didn't like the idea of having Scarpia portrayed as a villain, one-color villain. There must be shades of perfumes and colors in this character, this man who was extremely ruthless, but also extremely charming. That is what attracted, in a way, in a dangerous way, Tosca.
Tosca, she said, let's see, I'm relaxed. You call me here, nothing is wrong. I don't know anything, nothing is wrong. So she tries to act. So is this strength, pretending strength at the beginning and calm, but which she cannot maintain because of he has all the trump cards. I don't know what she will think after she has accepted, to be with Scarpia.
And then she decides to do it, to go to bed with him. But she's terrified of doing it because she's afraid of liking it. La via più breve, Civitavecchia. It's almost a waltz. She's like that, looking that he's writing the right thing, and with the feather it passes on her arm. She has that extraordinary sensation of contact. Then she doesn't know what to do. I must drink a glass of water, wine, something. He empties the glass, and then bringing it down, she sees the sparkle of the knife. And that was a long pause, the slowest movement, and all the audience was zoom on them, on that hand and the glass. And then she puts her hand on it. That's it. Tosca, finalmente mia. Muori, dannato, muori 3 times. Muori.
Those muori, those hurt the voice, actually, if you really do them. But if you have the courage and the conviction to do it, it's a very important moment in the opera. That's a part of the role, and she reaches it.
Muori, dannato! Muori! Muori! Muori!
I think that you have to, as a performer performing the role of Tosca, go to the absolute limit. You have to imagine what it is like to kill someone.
I tried to explain to her that she kills him in the end because she's afraid of becoming his victim. She's afraid of becoming his mistress or whatever, abandon herself to him. So rather than doing that, as a remote motivation, the obvious motivation was the hatred for him and to save the life of Mario Cavaradossi. But as a woman, she had built up a sense of danger about this man who was irresistible. So I explained to her this. She said, "Do you mean, I know what you mean. Yes, sometimes I have that instinct of killing somebody." And she meant Onassis.
She might have wanted to kill her Scarpia, but his influence on her was very profound. I think she wanted to escape, but did she really want to escape into cafe society?
She wanted to become Mrs. Onassis, the richest woman on earth, and spend the rest of her life in villas, ships, and parties, and so on. So she had abandoned completely her duties as a singer.
You really have to be constantly there in order not to be insecure.
She just simply couldn't pull it together anymore. She couldn't pull it together. You have got to have the nerves. People don't realize what it means to stand on the stage and sing it in front of thousands of people.
On May the 22nd, 1964, Kallas walked onto the stage of the Paris Opera in the most beautiful production, certainly of Norma that I've ever seen, and without any doubt one of the most beautiful productions of anything I've ever seen. She had a tremendous triumph in it and did a number of performances, but at one of the performances she went in the last act to an exposed note and it cracked.
The last act, the concertato Padre tu piangi, at the end of an opera like Norma, where the voice of this poor soprano is, and to have that she couldn't sustain at the end, her voice cracked, literally, like I never heard in any theater. She got away beautifully with Tosca. Norma was pushing too far. It was worth having her back in Norma for those who had not seen her before or heard her before, but it was a big risk. And it proved to be, unfortunately, a deadly risk.
Her voice was failing her, and she knew it, and she knew she didn't have many more years left to perform.
She's the greatest. Only for her would I do this. She could sing a poor performance. I've never had an occasion to hear it, but she could, and she would still be just as magnetic as ever. This woman is just amazing.
On March the 19th, 1965, she went and gave only 2 performances in New York at the Great Metropolitan Opera.
It was a historic moment because Jackie Kennedy attended performance, and when Jackie Kennedy entered the Opera House, there was a tremendous reaction and applause, and everybody stood. Then things quieted down, and there was the voice of Maria singing Mario. It was like a 5-minute ovation that even surpassed the entrance of Jackie Kennedy. This was, about 14 months after the death of John Kennedy, so Jackie Kennedy, was the most famous person in the world at that time.
During May of that year, she undertook to do another run of Normas. And they went very well until the last one. And then fate struck her. She collapsed at the side of the stage, and down the curtain came because it was right at the right moment. It wasn't very long before it became very clear that the performance wasn't going to continue. This was caused by her blood pressure. She went into incredibly low blood pressure, dangerously low blood pressure.
Her relationship with Onassis was not going well. He had been having affairs with other women, some of them very prominent, and she was afraid of losing him. And the strain, all these strains came together, and I think it was out of anxiety and exhaustion that she was not able to perform.
After the trauma of what happened on the stage with the Paris Opera, Maria was due to return to Covent Garden for a run of performances as Tosca. She cancelled 3 of the 4 performances.
The Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, where last Friday Marie Collier had such a tremendous triumph in Tosca, substituting for Maria Callas. Well, tonight, Maria Callas herself is coming for this gala performance. A gala performance because...
She pulled out of those 3 performances because she knew she couldn't do them the way she wanted. And of course, her fans were devastated.
She said, I can give 1 performance, and I have never experienced such cruelty in a theatre as the so-called loyal and loving British were to give her. She came onto the stage to fantastic silence, horrible silence. By the end of the act, her witchcraft had started to work. By the end of Act 2, it was no question about it. The whole theatre had started to become warm. And at the end, she triumphed, but at what a price. The 2 terrible experiences, the one of collapsing in the Paris Opera and coming to a stony audience at Covent Garden, she was deeply hurt by this. To undermine her whole being as a stage performer.
She was obliged to give her best every night. And maybe she felt she was not anymore, she lost confidence. And I think that was the beginning of the end of this career.
In the last act of Tosca, when she comes to the top of the Castello Sant'Angelo where her lover Cavaradossi is going to be shot, she tells him that she's got a reprieve from Scarpia.
She's so heartbreaking because she believes that they are going to be happy. He doesn't. He's just, he knows she's dreaming.
Cavaradossi says, liberi. And Tosca says, liberi. So the liberi of Cavaradossi, which there are equal notes, liberi. And she said, liberi. Via pel mare, he said. And you believe that? Non ti par. And she's lost in their dreams. I said, okay. So he plays alone. Amaro sol per te
If Cavaradossi secretly in that music indicates that he knows that he doesn't believe Scarpia has done this, she does. She's naive. Kallas was naive. She believed that Onassis would genuinely marry her.
Onassis began to see Jackie in 1965, and at first it was just friendly visits, and then by 1968 it developed into a romantic relationship. But when Maria found out about that, she went berserk. She took some pills. She was hospitalized, and she had these great scenes with Onassis on the phone. He told her it didn't mean anything. His intention was to have both of them, but he felt he had to marry Jackie because he couldn't have an affair with Jackie without creating a scandal that would hurt her children, and that's what Jackie encouraged him to believe, and so he married her. Maria was the love of his life, and as much as Onassis could love any woman. And the more he was away from her, the more he felt the loss. And he really wanted her in his life. He called her, and 10 days after the wedding, he flew to Paris and tried to see her. As the marriage with Jackie became very difficult, he wanted to go back and change things, and he wanted to divorce Jackie. He hired lawyers. He kept asking his Greek lawyers, find a reason for me to divorce her. And under Greek law at that time, unless it was for a serious offense like adultery or abandonment, you couldn't get a divorce.
Maria must have felt that a cruel trick had been played on her. She genuinely believed that she would be with him and that he would make an honest woman of her. He would marry her. After all, she had borne this child to him. He, as he had done so often in his life, led her to believe one thing and did something else.
It's an elegant, like at the entrance of a ballet. They go up to the execution with that kind of music. Everybody has been always wondering, why has he put this cheerful music there instead of a... That music tells how she feels. She feels that this is all a great joke. Come on, let's go there. Be brave, pretend to be desperate. I pretend to be desperate, but the music will tell what she really feels.
She thinks that that he is actually going to be let free, and she doesn't realize that Scarpia really has given the command that he gets killed. She says to him, "Oh, look how wonderful he died. He's great. He's wonderful. Be an actor like on the stage. I can show you." And then she realizes that he's actually dead. She's actually been killed.
Presto su, Mario, Mario, su presto, andiamo, su, Mario, Mario.
She just tears the inside out. And then they come after her and she runs up the battlement side and she gives out that last note before she jumped. Scarpia before God. And that's the last note of her opera career. Maria never performed on the opera stage again. And later, the reason became clear to me when she asked me to come and see her in her Paris home. She turned to me and she said, "Alan, Kallas is dead." And I looked into her face, and I really didn't quite know what to do.
She always views herself as two people, Maria, the woman, and Kallas, the artist. And she saw Kallas, the artist, dying.
The whole Onassis saga is a rerun of Greek tragedy. He lost his son in an private aeroplane crash. He never got over that. He really never got over it. And she knew that, she understood that, and he began to go downhill.
Onassis' son died in 1973. After that, he flew to Paris, went to see Maria, and told her, he's gone, my son is gone. She said, if only our son had lived. I think if Omiro had lived and he had another son, Onassis wouldn't have been crushed so by the loss of Alexander. Onassis lost all will to live, and he died in 1975. Her life was very dark and unpleasant once Onassis had died, you know. She stayed basically home and just went for walks and went to restaurants and saw very few friends and talked to them about what might have been, you know, with Onassis. If he hadn't died, she wouldn't have died. I mean, once he died, she had no reason to live, and she died of a heart attack 2 years after he did. She was only 53.
Maria Callas inspires the generations that follow. In fact, more today than even in her own time. And I feel very fortunate that I was in that audience at that very last performance. Somebody recorded it in the auditorium. And so, for all its faults, you can hear for yourself.
Maria Callas opened the door to popularity of the opera world to the man on the street. You know, the rest of us sort of follow suit. We're just sort of dragging behind her. But she was the inspiration for all that came behind.
That's wonderful when somebody transcends just the ordinary opera fame.
And this is only the one regret, big regret that I have in life, that I was not able to sing with her.
I think of Maria Callas when I look at music, I think, how would she have made of that? She's very present in my life, like lots of people. I think she touched our lives in a very curious sort of way.
She was, in my eyes, completely supreme. I'm only sorry that she didn't live longer and we saw many more performances.
Like the heroine in Tosca, she devoted herself totally to art and to love, and did it with such intensity that she was consumed by them. She died because of the terrible losses that she suffered, the loss of her voice, the loss of the love of her life, Aristotle Onassis.
That was the tragedy of Maria Callas. Great lady. Good lady.
Lasciami. Tu fino a stasera stai fermo al lavoro e mi prometti sia cosa opportuno, sia treccia bionda bruno, a pregar non verrà donna nessuna. Lo giuro, amore, va. Quanto m'appretti? Ancora. No.
Η Εθνική Λυρική Σκηνή και η Εταιρεία για το Κτίριο της Όπερας και την Ακαδημία Λυρικής Τέχνης Μαρία Κάλλας παρουσιάζουν γκαλά όπερας για την Ακαδημία Λυρικής Τέχνης Μαρία Κάλλας, Κυριακή 21 Σεπτεμβρίου στις 8:30 στο Ηρώδειο. Μουσική διεύθυνση Λουκάς Καριτινός.